Hello, lovely friend. I am Dr. Mary Barson.
And I'm Dr. Lucy Burns.
And this is the Real Health and Weight Loss Podcast.
Hello, gorgeous ones. Happy Tuesday morning. How are you, my friend? I am joined, not by Dr. Mary this week, but a glorious, glorious woman who I just totally love. Like, I love her. We met her in a business group. As you know, Dr. Mary and I often talk about how we go off to learn. We sort of go to this kind of business club so that we can learn how to do the things that we need to do to run a successful business, just like you need to do the thing that you're learning, the things that you need to do to run a successful life and health business, if you like. So I have met this most fabulous woman. Her name is Emma Walkinshaw. She's like seriously good stuff. Like, honestly, I wish you could all just be her friend like I am lucky enough to be. But today we have a fabulous talk and I can't wait to get into it. So, gorgeous Em, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thanks, Luz. I'm so happy to be here. I was delighted to join you. And of course, we've just had the lovely joy of seeing each other on the weekend at the business conference, which is always great to see each other face to face. But I have been an avid listener of your podcast for quite some time. And I love all the knowledge you and Dr. Mary give to women and to everyone who listens. I know, yes, men also are interested in this too, but since though I'm a woman, I always refer to women. So I'm one of those women that listens every week to your beautiful information. Oh. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. Well, lovelies, as you know, Dr. Mary and I love talking about lifestyle medicine, and, you know, we talk about a bit of meditation, but there are a few things in our repertoire that are actually not our genius zone. I know, hard to believe, but I'm humbled to admit that yoga is not my strong point. It really isn't. And it is Emma's. So most of you would have the understanding that yoga and movement is good for you, but maybe you're a little bit frightened of it. So I thought we'd have Em on the podcast to myth bust yoga and give you really actionable, practical steps about why it's good for you and how you can introduce it into your life. And here, newsflash, you don't need to be a skinny mini size 6 wearing Lululemon or Lorna Jane to do really good yoga. So, Em, I would love you if you could just maybe give me a little bit of an insight, maybe the history of yoga, and tell me, you know, a bit more about it.
Yes. Well, yoga is thousands of years old. And you're right, before we hit record, we did say it's not just asana, which asana is the movement part of yoga, when yoga is a philosophy. So it's not a religion, it's a philosophy. And almost it has a set of sutras, they call it, which are kind of almost like little laws that you live by. So, for instance, one of the sutras is all about the law of non-attachment. So not being attached to things. And that's also not being attached to our body as well, knowing that it's this beautiful vessel, but not having an attachment to it. The other one is it's all about treating yourself with kindness is another big part of the yoga philosophy. Other one is cleansing the body, and there's lots of little practices that yoga has, like, for instance, the neti potty, where you will pour liquid into one side of your nose, the salt water, and clear out the other side of the nose. Or breath work is another way that you cleanse the body. Also, what else is another philosophy of yoga? There is so many of them. There is many of them, but it's not just doing a downward dog or doing a headstand. That's actually not the aim of yoga. It's to quieten the mind. And they say it's actually a moving meditation. When you get into the flow and with your breath of yoga, it's actually the movement is to lull us into that place where you have a little gap between your thoughts. It's not all about, you're not all in your head. So that's the asana part. And I fell in love with yoga. I've practiced in yoga very solidly for 10 years. So in my late 30s, I really ramped up the yoga practice. And I had a trip to India in 2016, which really deepened my understanding of yoga. And in India, it's not like our Western yoga. They really do incorporate all of these beautiful elements that are not what we see perhaps on Instagram or Facebook, where we're watching people in very skimpy little outfits doing some very jazzy yoga, which, yes, that's a form of yoga, but it's accessible to everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think you're right. Like I if I think of yoga right now in my brain, I think, oh, when we go to Noosa, my kids will go down to the park where there is some, 20-something-year-old, lovely woman who probably weighs 50 kilos, who is showing them how to do, downward dog and child pose. And I go, there's no way my knees would cope with that.
Yeah. So it's not necessarily that. And what's very even popular, and I've run this even online for a few corporate clients that have an office, and I'll go into Zoom and we'll do chair yoga. You can literally sit in your
Yeah.
chair and do yoga. It doesn't have to
Yeah.
be what we think that we've seen, because it scares a lot of people off when it actually is a very gentle movement, and it releases a lot of the tightness in the body. And when you get into that beautiful flow and it's led with some breath work and some meditation, it's great for the nervous system. Getting you out of that fight,
Yes.
flight, freeze, getting you into that rest and digest, helps better with the sleep, connecting with who you are. There's so many more benefits than, it being an acrobatic workout. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. I love that. So, yes, and we talk about that a lot, that in this busy world, we're often tense. We're often up in our head worrying, hashing over the day or the week's events, and spending all that time with that sympathetic, is what we call it, the sympathetic nervous system, the fight and flight. And this is another way to activate the parasympathetic nervous system.
Yeah.
So if, let's say people go, oh, that sounds good. But you can't just run off and start doing, or maybe you can, I don't know. Can you just run off and start doing yoga? Like, how does it work?
Yeah.
Like, what would you do if someone was sort of yoga curious? What would be, how would they approach it?
Now, I'm just going to say it, Luce, I'm going to say it. Yoga at a gym is very different to yoga at a yoga studio. So if you were curious about yoga and thinking about perhaps the integrity of yoga, if you can find a yoga studio that has a beginner class, that potentially could be very helpful. And letting the teacher know that you are a beginner and perhaps how you feel. And I had a yoga studio for almost 4 years. I only just sold it a year ago. And I would always do a
Yeah.
little because it was a boutique studio and I had reformer Pilates and all of that. So I would often do, so if you can find somewhere where you can actually have a chat with the teacher or the owner of the studio, and let them know how you feel, because often, and I used to intrigue me all of the time, where someone would come and say to me, I'm not good at yoga and I am a beginner, when they potentially were probably better at yoga than me and have been practicing longer. But the idea of a true yogi knows they're always a beginner. I say I'm still a beginner.
Right.
So that's the ethos. So knowing that, you are a beginner, if you can find a little studio, explain to them perhaps your fear to the teacher and just take it really gentle. Don't feel pressured that, let's say that, because in a class sometimes there can be someone who's a more advanced practitioner. There is no competition in yoga. You go to your own pace, but a gentle class would be very helpful, without a doubt. Or
Yep.
even there's a yoga class called yin yoga. It can be a little bit annoying, though, I will be honest, because you hold each pose for 5 minutes. And the idea of a yin practice is, yes, it really gets into that rest and digest, but you've got to sit with your thoughts. And you can be in a simple cross-legged position, or, as a yoga teacher would always say, get into the most comfortable position. And then it's actually sitting with your thoughts while you're in that pose till they tell you to change. So it can be a very slow class, which can be actually really frustrating, because you want to be
Yes.
moving, where that's the whole practice of yoga, is actually sitting with your breath and your thoughts. So yin yoga is a great place to start, being mindful that you are going to have to slow right down and be with your thoughts. Or a beginner's
Yes.
class can be really helpful too. And when it comes to what you wear, you don't have to be in your, like you mentioned, you don't have to be in your Lululemon or your Lorna Jane or whatever the latest, greatest is. Just be comfortable. Just be
Yeah.
comfortable.
So, yeah. So yeah, t-shirt and trackies
Yeah.
could do.
Yeah.
So interesting. Where, you know, you, I guess it was a little warning that, you know, if you're going to do yin yoga, you're also going to have to sit with your thoughts. But it's interesting, isn't it, that in this current day, our current society, that's actually not something we're used to doing very often.
We're not. Even being in a yoga room with your phone in the waiting room and not beside you while you're on your mat can be really challenging for some people.
Yeah. Yeah. It's I remember telling my kids once that, you know, A, when I was growing up there weren't mobile phones. And B, when we did get a mobile phone, they were the Nokia, and the only game you could play was that snake game. Like, it was boring, so no one played it.
Yeah. Whereas now we've got this sense of entertainment. And I say, often I'd say, people would often say, can I bring my phone? And I'd say, well, if you feel you must, but if you can go an hour without it. And I would say, can somebody wait an hour for you? Can you actually, if it's 6 o'clock at night and we're stepping into a yoga room, can someone wait till 7 for you to get back to them? And often they'll go,
Yeah.
oh, yeah, they can. Because they
Yeah.
can. You can actually,
Yeah.
someone can wait an hour for you. But it's
totally.
the untraining of that part of us that I feel is also a great gift of the yoga practice.
Yeah, which is really, I mean, it's so interesting. I look and I can see that moving forward, kids of today are rarely without their phones. They're rarely without some form of stimulation. Whereas we, growing up, I mean, we spent a lot of time being bored, and you know, you just develop a it's not foreign, so you just develop like a tolerance for it.
Yeah. And appreciation. It's okay just to kick the can down the road. When we were a kid,
Yeah,
what did we used to do? I don't know. We used to just fluff around, I don't know, on our bikes or whatever. We didn't need to have, it was okay to have a bit of gaps of time or a bit of white space.
yeah. And nowadays, and this, I mean, this was one of the things that came from our business conference, was that people go, you know, you get all your best ideas when you're in the shower.
Yeah.
It's because there's space and time. And so potentially, I'm imagining, I don't know if this happens to you, Em, you know, do you get all your best ideas when you're doing yoga?
Yes, I have actually had some great solutions in yoga or in shavasana at
Yeah.
the end. So we always finish the yoga practice with shavasana, which is essentially the corpse pose, they call it. But the corpse pose is where you're laying or you're sitting and you are still, and often a little bit of breath work. The lights are out, and I would just not talk. If I'm leading, I would just not talk and let people be in stillness. And often that's,
Yeah.
and even, I don't know if your listeners believe in this, Luce, or they're a little bit open to, but often people, intuition, or even a loved one that's even, gone over to spirit, they'll have a little
Yeah.
message.
Yeah, right. Yes, yes, yes. So the brain is open.
Yeah, the brain, the body, the mind is open. And that is really
Yeah.
helpful, because also when you've got the wriggles out, so when someone comes in, they've finished work, they get into the yoga studio and they get the wriggles out. And even if it was a yin practice, even if we've been in where we're holding the pose for 5 minutes, we've had a chance to go through that phase where, the mind starts, which is the teacher puts you in the posture and you go, oh, I hate this posture. All the talk that you have in your mind. Then you go,
yeah.
oh no, I can feel that releasing in my left side now. This talk that you have, and then you
Yes.
kind of weave in and out. So if you were to put somebody straight into shavasana at the start of the yoga class, they get the itchies and the scratchies because they haven't had a chance
Yeah.
to decompress the thoughts or the mind. So by the end of the yoga practice, people are more than happy to fall into their shavasana because they've knocked the top off of that frantic energy. And that is what I love
Yes.
about yoga. And I teach yoga hatha, which just means sun and moon. So I say they come in at the start of the class and they've had their day. Or, it's at the start of the day, they might be getting ready for the day. The to-do list might be running or all of that. Then we get into a little bit of a gentle movement, a flow. So it could be, it's yoga, some yoga classes or hatha is almost like a little gentle flow of a dance. It's very gentle, but you get this little lull where You're moving the energy, and then we climb the mountain. So you might get to kind of a peak pose that the pose mightn't be, it could simply, the peak pose could be tree pose, where you're just balancing. And as we know, on some days, I would say, on some days I couldn't balance for love or money, other days I could balance. And it's often what's going on in the mind. Or have I
Yeah.
had a coffee? Am I too tired? Am I too hungry? Am I too thirsty? What's happening with balance? Because other days I could balance, but it would be perhaps the peak pose would be a balancing posture. And then you come down the other side of the mountain in the hatha yoga class and you do some other postures and you end up on the ground where shavasana happens. But I describe yoga or a hatha class as having the entree, the main, and then the dessert. And shavasana is the dessert where you actually get to be in the
Right.
sweet spot, the sweetness of life. But you leave feeling quite full. There's a real fullness because you've done your breath work, you've done a bit of meditation, you moved a bit of energy. And this can be in a very gentle class, Luce. I'm not talking where, we may not have even overly broken a sweat, but we've moved the energy. And there's
Yes.
a spaciousness in the body from the postures.
Fascinating. It's so interesting because, as you said, I don't do yoga, but I swim. And swimming for me is a similar state. So I'll start off and particularly if I've got stuff on my mind, swimming up and down. And after a while, I've either come up with a solution, so I don't need to think about it anymore, or it just drifts off.
Yeah.
And so I guess it's similar. But I wonder if, so many people will say, oh, I've tried meditating. I can't meditate. My brain's too busy. And so maybe doing yoga first will help that settle and then they can do the shavasana, which is that stillness bit.
Yeah. Or like you've just explained there, Luce, go for your swim and then try your meditation, your shavasana. Or go for your walk and then try your meditation. Because when we've got that energy in the body or the mind is racing, we need to just let the pressure valve off a bit and then we can center.
Yeah. I love that. I love that idea of centering.
Yeah. And that's why asana was originally, so yoga, the philosophy of yoga, asana, the movement part was actually designed so people could meditate. So that was purely what it was designed. But originally yoga was just meditation. It wasn't even the body movement. But then they said, well, I can understand now people need to kind of move some of that energy so they can center and ground. Yeah.
Interesting. So the whole point of the poses is so you can actually meditate. Yeah. Amazing. I love that.
Makes sense.
And
it works.
Yeah. And that's the whole thing that, it works. So if someone was starting a yoga practice, like how often, I know people love guidelines and rules. How often should they do it?
As often as you like, but I think it's not thinking that you have to do it for 1 hour, 5 days a week. It can purely be, and as you know, Luce, I run a little program, a free group called 21 Minutes of Morning Magic, which is 7 minutes of yoga, 7 minutes of meditation, 7 minutes of journaling. And that's 3 mornings a week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday morning. And that's merely 7 minutes of yoga each day. And that could be enough.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it could be incorporated after you walk or after you swim. A little bit of gentle yoga, which is your breath work, a bit of movement, and then your shavasana, your meditation.
Yeah, right.
But it doesn't have to be for hours.
Yeah, I think that's what people get frightened of, that it's going to be hard, that it's going to be for hours, that they're going to be bored, that again, that they don't have the right clothes, and that there's all these different sorts, yin yoga, hot yoga, yoga nidra, yoga, yoga, I have to stand on my head, hard yoga, soft yoga, I don't know, so many yogas.
Yes.
So, it's a bit overwhelming.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I love that. So if anyone was wanting a little taster of yoga, then they could just come and join your free group.
Absolutely. I'll give you the link, Luce, to put in the show notes or wherever you put that. But people are welcome. Absolutely come and have a little. And the yoga that I do, the 7 minutes, is very gentle. And let's say, yes, I do sit on the floor, but let's say that you can't sit on the floor, sit in a chair. It's okay to sit in a
Yep.
chair. It's almost giving yourself permission to adapt. And of course, because it's in a Facebook group, I can't see you. So it
Yeah.
doesn't matter. I've had people message me and
Yeah.
say, when we were doing our 7 minutes this morning, I was just in Shavasana. And that's all I
Yes.
had the energy for. And then I did the meditation and the journaling. And with the meditation, I always give a mantra, which is or a affirmation, which is just a simple. This morning was I am courageous. Was our simple because I find in that 7 minutes, yes, it goes quickly, but often the mind wanders. So I give just a very simple I am statement just to bring you back to the moment and remind you, hang on a
Yeah.
moment, I'm anchoring my statement back in. And it's really just to have, before the day starts, a little break in that traffic where you don't start your day checking your emails, looking at the news, looking at text messages or social media, that you actually just start with the first 21 minutes just for you. And the 21 minutes, they say it takes 21 days to change a habit. I thought, what about in 21 minutes? What can we do with 21 minutes?
Yeah.
And I often say if someone cannot find 21 minutes in a day for themselves, that's a concern.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And, we often talk about the power of small steps. And I love the fact that it's 21 minutes, which is just 7 minutes. So 7 minutes of journaling, 7 minutes of meditation, 7 minutes of yoga. That's doable.
And it's
And you don't even have to do it every day.
no, not even every day. And even if on the other days you just got the 7 minutes in, and then you can tick the box and say, I did good today. I did good.
Yeah, absolutely. So if our listeners are currently driving in the car and they forget to go to the show notes, if they were just searching on Facebook, they would just look for 21 minutes
Of
of
Morning
morning
Magic.
magic. Is that
Yes, they would.
right?
And you'll see, and of course Emma Walkinshaw's there, so they will see that. But the official page name is 21 Minutes of Morning Magic and Inspiration. So 21
Okie
minutes of
dokie.
morning magic.
Excellent.
So 21 minutes of morning magic
Yeah.
and inspiration, and they can come and request to join the group and come and join me, and I'll see you
Yeah.
live. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that would be so good. And I think, what I love is, again, I know people get worried that, that their yoga teacher is going to be unrelatable. And again, and I think that's probably just come about from social media because they think everybody is, it's not 21 minutes of morning magic. It's every 21-year-old yoga teacher. Whereas, I think you're a woman in your late 40s, there's no, you're not, a stick,
No.
as I like to say. As I always say to people, Dr. Mary and I, we're not sticks. We are, of course, hotties, healthy on the inside, as are you. And so as a beautiful, woman in her midlife who's a hottie, but not wearing Lululemon, I think it would be really helpful for people to have a crack and have a taste and have a try of yoga in a really non-threatening, easy peasy way.
And when I became a yoga teacher, so I studied in 20, so like I said, practiced solidly for 10 years. And then in 2018, I decided to study to be a yoga teacher. And I can remember thinking to myself, I was a size 14 at the time, and now I'm probably a size 16. So at the time I was size 14. I remember thinking to myself, I'll become a yoga teacher when I'm 10 kilos lighter. And then I had the thought, but what if I never get 10 kilos lighter? I'm never going to be a yoga teacher. So I did it anyway.
Yeah.
I did it anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it is, and again, we've talked a bit about dieting in the past and diet culture, but that's what diet culture does for women. It says you can't do this until you're thin enough.
Yes.
And you can't do it because other people will judge you.
Yeah.
And you can't do it because, of all the reasons, everyone will think you're too fat to be a yoga teacher, or you're too fat to teach health, or you're too fat to, I don't know, ride a horse. And at the end of the day, again, it's a big, give those judgies You just give them the bird.
Yeah, absolutely. And yes, you do. And you know, the other thing that I have loved over the years of teaching yoga is I have been surprised and delighted so many times at what a woman's body can do. And, you know, I have probably been from time to time a little bit judgmental, gone to go into a pose and thought, oh, well, maybe that's not accessible to them, and they have nailed it. For instance, and everyone listening will know this, what about women who can still do the splits? If you can do the
Oh,
splits,
I
you can do
know.
the splits. And it's a little bit like that in yoga. There's this memory that
Yeah.
comes back. And let's say, you know, I even know for myself, you know, being a size 14 now, a size 16, there's things in my body that just have muscle memory from being a teenager and a kid. And I can still do
Yeah.
those postures. And this is what happens for women. And I love it because I love when they get so surprised and delighted and go, I've still got it. Because they have.
Yeah.
Because what did you say? They're hotties.
Yeah, they're hotties. They're healthy on the inside. And, you know, I think that it's about having a crack, isn't
Yeah.
it? You just have to have a
And
crack.
enjoying your beautiful body as it is.
Yeah. Yep. And it's interesting, Em, because I know you and I have spoken in the past about body love, and that you had a summit, the Body Love Revolution Summit. But what do you say to women who feel that self-love or body love is out of their reach? Like, it's, you know, they might say to themselves things like, well, it's all right for you don't have my legs, or it's all right for you don't look like me, or it's all right for you, you know, it's just not a phrase I like. What are your thoughts on that?
I know that well, Luce, because I would say that I still sit, even though I teach this and I talk about this and I love this work, I know that there can still be those inner critic thoughts that creep in as much as you're trying to override it. And sometimes you just can't. But what you can get to is self respect. So self
Yeah.
respect isn't necessarily self love. Respect is I'm going to take really good care of it, feed it well, and move it. I might not love it, but I'm going to respect it. And that for
Yeah.
me is at least a
Yeah.
little step closer. And I also acknowledge too, it's still okay to desire to be in, to want to have a desire to want to be in a smaller body. That is not a bad
Yeah.
thing. It doesn't mean that you go, well, now I'm doing this body love thing, so I'm just going to accept myself and let myself go and not, because that's not respect. When we go, well, I'm just going to eat everything and I'm going eat things that we know are not helpful, that don't make us feel good, but you know, what the heck, just let it all go. It's not about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
It's saying I am not quite loving myself, but your favorite saying, can't hate yourself thin, loose, one of my favorite sayings.
No.
But can I respect myself to wellness? I believe I can.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do I still
Yeah,
desire to be in a
absolutely.
smaller body? Yeah, on most days.
Yeah.
However,
Yeah.
I'm not there now, but I am not going to miss out on this big, beautiful life and let it, because in the past, my own body stuff, you know, this is firsthand experience. I know this journey well. I've let it almost affect my relationships and little
Mm.
things. And I'm sure listeners will, I'm sure a lot of women will identify with this. You get invited to a party or a gathering and some people there that you really like and would want to go, but the sheer fact of thinking I've got nothing to wear or nothing fits me, so you say no.
Yeah.
So you almost stop life. So if you can at least get to the
Yeah.
respect bit and
Yeah.
your energy is good and you know you're taking really good care of yourself, you're a little bit more self-compassionate.
Yeah, totally. Totally. And I think I loved that bit that you referred to earlier where you just, you know, women's bodies are phenomenal. You know, lots of us have done incredible things. You know, not everybody, but lots of us have birthed children. Like, that in itself is pretty amazing. Lots of us have done hard stuff. And you know, this aesthetic that we've been conditioned to believe we need
Yeah.
um, is just rubbish, totally rubbish.
Is. And I think as now a woman in menopause, I've
Mm,
had moments where I've regretted not enjoying my 20s and my 30s. So I've made a
yeah,
really strong decision to say, I will not do that in my 40s. And now I'm in my late 40s. I'm at the back end of the
Yeah.
decade, or I'm 48 of my 40s, and I think I'm not going to do it again. And it is really quite foolish to want to be back at 20 or 30. I've had my time in the sun there, and it was wonderful.
Yeah.
And I loved my 30s, and that was wonderful. And now I choose to make the most of 48, because 48's
Yeah.
wonderful.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
this body isn't anywhere
Absolutely.
else. It is a size 16 right now, but it's always in flux and flow. And as long as I'm respecting it, we're on the way.
And do you know what? I mean, you mentioned earlier that you were at one stage of 14 and you probably hated your body then too. So it's like we've got this idea that I'll only love it once it gets to a certain size. And so before then it's not worthy of it. And that doesn't work. I mean, we know that because I often think people often come to me and they go, if only I was as fat as I was when I was 20. And in 20, they hated themselves because I was so, and I'm using, air quotes, fat. And now they go, I can't believe that. I can't believe I spent all that time hating on myself. And, and now. And I go, so stop hating on yourself now because it hasn't worked.
Yes.
It hasn't worked. Whatever you thought it was going to do, it hasn't worked. So,
And it's such an illusion too. It really is.
yeah,
Because you could look at someone and really, often if someone even shares their size, that's an illusion itself. I mean, and you know what, Luce? The dress I'm wearing right now, if I was to show you the tag, it's actually a small. I am not a small. This dress is small.
no,
So it's just and I've got a dress in my wardrobe that's 2XLs. I've got a dress in my wardrobe that's a medium. So all of that
yes,
and that's what it is a little bit around the story that we tell ourselves and this size we think we need to be, appreciating and
yeah,
loving, and I feel like doing right by yourself so your energy is good. You are going to the
yeah.
bathroom regularly. You're not feeling bloated. All of those markers are more of an indicator of your wellness than potentially what your dress size is.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think, looking after your own body the way you would look after your child's body or the way you would look after your dog's body. You feed it, you nourish it, you care for it, you pat it, you tell it it's been good, you reward, again, reward, it's always tricky because people are conditioned to use food for reward. But you just love it. I know it feels hard. Self-love. Ugh. And again, for us, I think, at our generation, we grew up with people that go, oh, she loves herself. It was a slur.
Yeah.
And now so I do. I love your phrase of self-respect, giving your body and your mind the respect it deserves.
Yeah, yeah, and
Yeah.
it is that too. And not feeding yourself junk food, but that's also for your mind and your body. Doing things that aren't trashy to yourself, I think, is another thing.
Yeah.
Coming from that beautiful place of self-respect, which is eating really good quality food. And I've
Yeah.
been raised by parents who have always really rated food a lot. So I remember, on a couple of instances, and this is what my father's always said to me. And both of my parents, my father doesn't drink, they don't drink. And I remember blueberries were $9 a punnet or something. And I said to Dad, oh, they're $9 a punnet. And he said, you got to be kidding me, Em. He said, there's people out there that would spend $20 on a bottle of wine. He said, if you want the blueberries for $9, buy the blueberries for $9.
Yeah.
And thinking that, that's what we'll often do is, when I've always been shown that self-respect is feeding yourself really good quality of food. And if you can think about it, if
Yeah.
I'm happy to spend whatever on a bottle of wine or even chocolate, spend the $9 on the
Yeah.
blueberries, and I remember another time
Yeah.
when bananas were crazy expensive. Remember the floods years ago with bananas?
Yes.
But just going, if you want the bananas, spend the money because you're worth it. You're actually
Yeah,
worth
you
it.
deserve good food. Yeah, absolutely. Yes, thanks, Maybelline, for that. But yeah, or L'Oreal, whoever. But yeah, you totally are. You totally are. All right, gorgeous one. So 21 minutes of morning magic and inspiration is the name of Emma's Facebook group. It's free to join if you would love. I would love you to head on over and, just have a crack at some journaling. As you know, we're big fans of journaling, some yoga and a little bit of meditation, and just see how you feel. Be brilliant.
Yeah.
Good.
Everyone's welcome. Come and join.
Excellent. All right, Em, thanks so much for your wisdom and your generosity. And yes, I look forward to catching up with you soon.
Thank you, Luz. Most appreciated.
You're welcome. All right, my lovely listeners, have a fabulous, fabulous week. I can't wait to see what's in store for us this week. It'll be, the usual, looking after ourselves, moving our bodies, eating well, probably a swim. I don't know. It'll be a cracker anyway. All right, gorgeous ones, take care. Bye for now. The information shared on the Real Health and Weight Loss podcast, including show notes and links, provides general information only. It is not a substitute, nor is it intended to provide individualised medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment, nor can it be construed as such. Please consult your doctor for any medical concerns.